What a great song. That was amazing. Great selection and a good introduction to our talk for today. And great music from Faith Rivera, who's been in this building, as some of you know, when the World Parliament of Religions was on. And she sang some great songs here, resonating in this building, all which adds up to its wonderful atmosphere, which hopefully we'll see you both weeks in the next 2 weeks here. Okay, would you now welcome from Adelaide, Unity Minister, Rev Phyllis Grace. Welcome along, Phyllis.
Thank you, Reverend Bill. And good morning, everyone. Lovely to see all your beautiful faces and reconnect with you all. A couple of months ago, I was invited to join my daughter Wendy and her son Beau for a night at the movies. The cinema we were to attend offers a double feature each Monday night. The movie that inspired Wendy and Beau to make the journey to the city was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Now, when Wendy told me that really didn't inspire me to go to the movies. However, when Wendy told me what the second feature was, I was very willing to join them, knowing that we each had to sit through a movie that the others hadn't chosen. The documentary-style movie called Kuyanatski, which with music composed by Philip Glass, was the second movie that I wanted to see, although I had never heard of it before. It was the music that really attracted me. It was written with 5 movements, each depicted through images that suited the name of the movement, and they fitted perfectly. First movement was Crazy Life. Second was A Life in Turmoil. The third, Life Disintegrating. Then Out of Balance. And lastly, A State of Life That Calls for Another Way of Living. The only word spoken throughout the film was the title repeated many times and sung by a beautiful bass voice through the first movement. The name Kuyanatski is a Hopi Indian word that means life out of balance, and it was first shown in 1982. It's an apocalyptic vision of the collision of 2 different worlds, urban life and technology versus the environment. And I think in 1982, that would have been rather outstanding because the environment wasn't a big issue as it is today. When writing about documentaries on climate change, David Bannis says, although there's been some really beautiful films about climate change, very enlightening, etc., he felt that the experimental film directed by American filmmaker Godfrey Reggio was outstanding. It is a visual meditation on how technology wreaks havoc on the natural world, and it consists of many portraits, time-lapse, and slow-motion footage of different people and landscapes across the United States, glued together by a mesmerising soundtrack by Philip Glass. Climate change was never mentioned in the film, and yet that's what it was about. It also, to me, depicted the chaotic life that we humans can live. So why have I mentioned this movie? Well, when the title for this talk came to mind, this film was right there reminding me of how out of balance our lives can be. And yet I also remembered some beautiful images of parts of the landscape that accompanied by what to me was a beautifully haunting yet meditative first movement. And the rest of the movie was very inspiring as well. The documentary demonstrated how music can depict life in an expressive but confronting way. Music is a very important part of my life, and although I do not play an instrument, I love to sing and often embarrassed my children when we shopped by singing along to the music being played through the public address system. and they'd say, "Mum, shush." However, I can still be heard singing along as I do my shopping. And often when I go to the gym, my fellow gym colleagues will hear me either humming along to the tune we're moving to or singing the words if I have any idea of what they are. And I probably annoy some of them, although some have said how they enjoy listening and hearing me sound so cheery as we do our gymnastic works. Charles Fillmore also loved music. He enjoyed dancing and singing. He recommended laughter as a healing agent and said singing stirs up joy in every cell. He wrote, "The spirit of health, or as the doctor calls it, the restorative power of nature, is always right at hand, awaiting an opportunity to enter in, to make whole and to harmonise all discord in the body. Back of every true song," he says, "is a thought of joy. It is the thought that counts in the end, because it is the thought that invites the healing spirit." He mentioned music many times in his writings, likening the principles of music and mathematics to the principles of life, saying they never change. He wrote, "There is one principle of music, but there are millions of combinations in symphony and song of the very few simple tones on which that principle is based. These tones are expressed in form as notes. They may be on the staff in variations beyond computation, and similar variations may also be repeated above and below the staff." He then writes that each one of us focuses the attributes of our consciousness in infinite combinations on the staff of life. He suggests that the intellect, along with the spiritual, are above the staff, and below the staff is the physical or sense nature. Ancient philosopher Pythagoras found that harmonic music is expressed in exact numerical ratio of whole numbers. And Plato showed the political significance of music's power by summoning Damon of Athens as his musical authority. Damon said that he would rather control the modes of music in a city than its laws, because the modes of music have a more decisive effect on the formation of the characters of the citizens. Oops. The ancient Greeks were also wary of music's power, because they understood that just as there was harmony, distort the spirit. Just spiritual healer and musician said this: "Music is the vitamin of the soul, the healer of the heart." Often our lives may feel out of balance. However, we each have free will to decide where we will focus our attitude. Will we let our sense nature or our spiritual nature influence our attitudes? Do we want to embrace discord or harmony in life and our lives? The music of our life is our choice. The music we listen to, sing along to, or even dance to can affect the way we feel and show up in life. Our lives can be so likened to music, and yet when the title for this talk and the movie Koyunatsuki came to mind, I questioned, and yet the more I contemplated what I'd write, I started questioning things like, what the difference between so in harmonic and us that all practice Prince compositions, symphony and concerto many times, and I've listened to many and yet never really bothered to question what the difference was. When I researched the difference of these two types of music, I thought our lives are more like concertos, which is a musical composition for instruments in which a solo instrument is played with the backing of an orchestral ensemble, sometimes large, sometimes small. The soloist and ensemble of a concerto are related to each other by alternation, competition, and or combination, and usually, but not always, written in 3 movements: fast, slow and lyrical, and then fast. When I consider my life, I recognise that there is only me living my life, so I'm a solo player, but there are many others who will support me and at other times seem to be very much in competition with me, and yet we are all part of the great musical experience I call life. And so I would liken our lives to a concerto rather than a symphony. There are times when the music of life will be bold. Other times it was quiet and peaceful. And other times it is joyful and playful. Charles wrote, "The principle of music moves through tones, as does the principle of mind moves through ideas." Of course, those ideas will affect the music, joyful and playful. As composers of music arrange certain notes and tones of music, so too our thoughts and feelings can produce harmony or discord in our lives. As the composer of your life, you can decide if you will compose your life like the composer of music who prefers to improvise their composition, writing freely and letting the music ideas flow. Or you may compose your life like the composer who writes down specific themes and lets their subconscious come back to them. Or you may work the composition of your life music out systematically, step by step, using formulas and mathematical equations, what we may find is that we practice all 3 methods. None of these methods are better or worse than the other. The result still needs to be the music you compose that you can live with and hopefully enjoy. I know when Reverend Bill asked me to do this talk, I had little idea of what I might choose as my subject, although I knew I wanted to include something about the word for this second week of Advent, which we've heard is peace. And so I kept asking myself, what can I talk about? 2 days later, I woke up with the idea, the music of life. Then I wondered, how can I do that and include something about peace? Once again, I was shown how our thoughts are prayers because ideas started to flow. And then, of course, I had the task of fitting all those ideas together to make a coherent talk. So considering the 3 methods offered as ways composers create music, I think I pretty much moved through each form. Firstly, I went through the freely letting ideas flow, and then I wrote about specific themes. And lastly, I endeavoured to work out the subject matter systematically. As we move through the Advent season, what is the music of your life going to sound like? Will it be filled with frantic noise, or will it be filled with peace and harmony? You are the composer and the conductor of your concerto, of your life. You can decide how you will respond in the many situations you will find yourself during not only this Advent season, but throughout all of your life. And as such, you can decide moment by moment how fast or slow, how peaceful or agitated you want your life to be, or your music to be. As today's daily word reminds us, we can be considerate and positive towards fellow shoppers, drivers, work colleagues, and most importantly, I think we need to be considerate to our family and friends. And it seems to me that oftentimes we let our frustrations sound loudest towards those we love. So let your music during this season of Advent be joyful and peaceful as you move through the days and weeks leading to the celebration of Christmas. And practice being peaceful in each moment as we prepare to welcome the birth of the Christ within. As Reverend Bill mentioned last week, there are many traditional Christmas carols that we listen to. We haven't really heard one yet today, but maybe it's coming up. But I did love that Australian one, Orana. We sing and listen to and often enjoy dancing to the traditional carols. But did you know that some of the words in there are based on verses from not only the Christian scriptures, but many come from the Hebrew scriptures too. The book of Psalms constituted the hymn book of the early church. The word psalm means sacred song or poem and is used in worship. According to Charles, no finer example of religious fervour and devotion and literary excellence can be found in the lyrics of any people. And that's what he wrote as he spoke of the book of Psalms. Pastor Cazuza wrote much of the Hallelujah chorus by handlers based on verses from the book of Psalms, and of course many of the other verses in the Bible. Joy to the World has reference to Psalm 98, verse 4 to 12, Psalm 19, verse 1, Psalm 96, verse 13, and Psalm 17, verse 7. And O come all ye faithful has reference to Psalm 95, verse 1 and 6. So it was interesting to me to learn about that, because I wasn't aware of how much of the Old Testament or the Hebrew scriptures actually was depicted in the old traditional songs or carols. And I looked then to find out, what does that word carol mean? Well, it can refer to an old round dance with singing, or the more popular meaning is the song or ballad of religious joy. And these usually are reference to Christmas, but there are some that refer to Easter, which was another interesting point for me. I didn't realise that the word carol was often referred to songs about Easter. So I've learned a lot in preparing for this talk. But looking at the yes, I've done that part. Let's move on. But Christmas is traditionally a time of rejoicing, kind-heartedness, spending time with family and friends, gift giving, and of course, the decorating. So, what is the music that will emanate from you this Christmas? Let it be one of peaceful thanksgiving, love and faith in the goodness of humankind. Remember, you are the composer and conductor of your song. You hold the baton that tells us how fast or slow it's going to be. So let your song reflect your spirit of love and peace. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Reverend Phyllis. Wasn't that interesting? I studied all that when I was at the conservatorium, but I'd forgotten about a lot of it. And the music of life is so vital. And thank you for illuminating where some of the carols came from, the Bible verses. And we've left it until December to start our carols because they're already being played in the supermarket in October.